As the great Ben Franklin stated, there is nothing that is inevitable in life besides death and taxes. But I think one thing that Mr. Franklin should have added is pain. No matter where you live, no matter how old you are, no matter your race, occupation, no matter the factors that determine what make you you, you're going to have to deal with pain and discomfort. Sometimes major pain, sometimes minor pain. But suffering does not make you virtuous. I find the whole notion pathetic when you're debating somebody about politics. And inevitably, the discussion turns to the reason that you are in a better position than I am is because your parents, they waited to get married before they had you. Your dad held a job, and your dad wasn't in prison. Now, my response to them is, so it's a point against me because my dad actually decided to do the right thing. I'm of the opposite. I think that when people do the right thing, it should be rewarded. But they want to make it like they're more virtuous than you because they lived in a tougher neighborhood than you have. When actually that means that their parents had bad judgment. And that judgment could pass on to them genetically, creating a cycle of toxic individuals who never produce anything for society. It's not always the case. But the point I'm making is, just because you suffer more than somebody does not mean you're more virtuous. If you look at a lot of serial killers or horrible individuals like Charles Manson, they had hellish childhoods. But you never hear anybody say, you know, Charles Manson, he was such a virtuous guy. So I don't think those two things are compatible, even though our society wants to make it seem that way. The question isn't if you've suffered more. The question is, how are you going to deal with that suffering? What coping mechanism are you going to use in order to try to cope with the pain? Some of the obvious toxic ways that individuals choose to deal with pain is alcohol, drugs, and another way they do, and people don't like when they hear this, is religion. I know individuals that they go to church meetings constantly, but they neglect their own children. And that is when it becomes toxic. Anything in itself is not toxic. Alcohol is not toxic. Money is not toxic. Nothing is toxic. The only thing that makes it toxic is how the individual uses it. If you drink a beer once in a while, that's different than becoming an alcoholic. If you smoke pot once in a while, that's different than becoming a pothead, not getting a good job because you can't pass a drug test, and becoming lazy. Another way people do it, and this is not really talked about, is toxic positivity. The new trendy positive vibes movement. That everything's supposed to be positive. You only want to be around people when they are positive, when they are up, when they are feeling alive. It's like those shirts you see. I saw this one girl. I was out at a place a few weekends ago. She had a shirt that said positive vibes only. And a few minutes later, one of her friends was talking about something. I wasn't paying much attention to the conversation. But she said something to the effect of, "You're bringing down my vibes. You're bringing down my mood." And in my opinion, that would classify as toxic positivity. Now, what that means is you use positivity to cope with pain. So what you do is you try to place a shield in front of you that protects you from pain. Anytime you feel a slight discomfort, anytime you feel anything, whether it is mental, psychological, physical, whatever it is, you avoid that situation. As a result, you become a weak person. Now, I'm not saying be Debbie Downer. I'm not saying go completely negative. What I'm trying to say is, in life you're going to express different emotions. If you found out you had a terminal disease, you went to the doctor, you were fairly healthy as far as you knew, you were playing sports, you were living your life, and then you found out you had cancer, well, there's no if, and, or buts about it. You're going to feel negativity. If your loved one passes away, you're going to feel negativity, and you got to let yourself feel that pain. You got to let yourself work through that pain instead of just trying to be positive all the time, which is creating an illusion. You're creating your own shadow. You're trying to divert your emotions away from the situation. And honestly, I think the right amount of pain is what we need. Think about your muscle, for instance. If you were to sit down for months without putting any pressure on your legs, your muscle would regress because it needs a healthy amount of stress in order to be sustainable. If you put the right amount of stress, if you exercise your muscles, if you do leg lifts, push-ups, you run up hills, your legs will improve and their strength becomes stronger. But if you put too much stress on your leg, you can break your leg. You can tear a ligament. And I think that's a microcosm of how we should be as humans. If you have the right amount of stress, just enough stress, that can make you stronger, that's the healthy way to be. The first thing I do after waking up and eating in the morning is I go out in the hot sun, because I work nights, so I wake up in the afternoon around 1 or 2 o'clock to eat something. Now, the reason I won't get into the whole science wonk shit on you, but when you're running, you need to burn calories, right? If you have no calories in your body, if it's been 8 hours since you've eaten, and you run, your body then uses carbs. And then when your body burns those carbs, which are fat cells, you are like a car with a gas tank that's run empty. So when you run empty, you're forced to replenish. And you end up eating more throughout the day, and it is a futile effort. I measure my calories all the time, and I've noticed that when I ran, before I knew the science behind it, without eating anything, what would happen was I would end up gaining more calories, and so the whole effort was futile. But I regress. But the first thing I do after eating is I run in the hot sun. Now, why do I do that? Running, whether you run when the sun's up or the sun down, does not make you any faster. It does not make you lose any more weight, but it toughens you. It builds mental strength. When you're outside, when you're running, you can feel your body running low. That sick feeling where you feel like vomiting. As you run up the hill, you look at the clock, 3 minutes left, and you're running and running. That feeling you feel, that builds toughness. If you go out of your way to make yourself uncomfortable reasonably, I make an effort whenever I'm at a club or a bar to go up to the most attractive woman and ask for her number. So what? I get rejected. It's about building up your toughness. If you never take risk, if you never build mental toughness, physical toughness, then you'll never succeed. And that's why a lot of these positive vibe individuals, they're not very successful in life, a lot of them. It's like they're all about law of attraction. But those individuals, they make less money than me. I'm not bragging. The point I'm making is their formula is not manifesting what they want. If you're going to tell me that you can stay at home all day and sleep, meditate, and manifest whatever you want simply because that's the way it works, then you better have more money than I have if you want to sell me on your goal. But the reason is because think about Tony Robbins, Dr. Phil, Oprah Winfrey. Being honest and saying you have to deal with pain, you have to sacrifice your gratification in the present term. So delayed gratification, suffering, hard work, taking risk, losing, and then you will succeed, which is obvious. That would not sell a lot of books. See, people don't want to go to churches. They don't want to go to Tony Robbins events to hear you're going to have to suffer. You're going to have to get rejected in business by the opposite sex. You're going to have to suffer. You're going to have to lose money if you want to start a successful business. If you want to be successful, that does not sell. See, dieting, it's all about finding a shortcut. Whether that's finding a pill, finding some sort of diet. Instead of just saying, you have to eat less, you have to exercise, and in 6 months, you might lose 100 pounds. That's not going to sell a lot of books, a lot of DVDs. So people want to hear the emotional, positive bullshit. And that creates a vacuum, a force field, a shield of toxic positivity. Which when you're dealing with something in life, instead of dealing with it for what it is, looking at it, assessing it, coming to the conclusion based upon empirical evidence, what happens is you shield yourself off from it. And the dangerous thing is when you feel any pain, you're not going to be able to deal with it. My sister, one of the nicest people I know, I love her to death, but she always constantly has to be positive. Anytime she feels any sort of pain, anytime something that is discomforting happens, she's always the first to complain about it because she's not used to it. I remember I was with her and a group of friends. We were driving down the road. She was visiting, she teaches in another country, but she was visiting the States for a period of time during the summer. We were driving down the road and all of a sudden, this was one of those back roads, the car ends up going into a ditch. Her friend was driving. But what ended up happening was we had to wait there for AAA to come. It took them over an hour. I remember that entire time she was complaining about how hot she was. She was complaining about getting bitten by mosquitoes. And since I've ran in the hot sun, since a lot of my jobs, I worked construction for a period of time. I had to lay in the 100-degree weather, I had to lay the cement and mix it. I was used to it. So what happened was, I remember this, plain as day. I literally went beside the ditch, leaned on the car, and I fell asleep until the guy got there. Now, I'm not bragging. I'm not saying I'm any better. The point I'm trying to make is I try to assess things as they are. I'm not, everything's perfect, everything's beautiful, but I'm also not a Debbie Downer. I assess situations as they come, and then I take them head on. But if you want to be a toxic, positive person, the first time you feel a little pain, the first time you're too hot, the first time you're a little sick, you're going to fold like a $4 suit in a rainstorm and completely be evaporated.